Hello, ATEEZ resident students and teachers. Thank you. You can sit down. In our previous lesson, we looked at the reproductive process in human beings, and I have given you a homework to complete. Before we go through looking at today's lesson, we will first of all look at the homework, and I hope you have finished. Receiving teachers to check that your students have finished the homework that was given. Your homework instruction was use the words below to complete the passage, and the words are as follows: sperm, inside embryo, reproduce, egg, mating, fertilization, and adult. Those are the words that you were asked. Complete a passage that was given. So we'll have a student in the model class to read the whole passage, and others check if the words that she or he uses are correct. We'll have Rose.
Human fertilization occurs inside a woman's body. During mating, the sperms are squirted into the woman's body. They swim to mate the egg. One sperm enters it and forms an embryo. This is called fertilization. The embryo then grows in the woman's body. After about 9 months, a baby is born. It eventually reaches maturity and becomes an adult. The person is now able to reproduce.
You agree? All right. Any disagreement? Receiving students, I hope you also have the same answers. Right. For you to confirm your answers, quickly look at your screen. The answers will be given just as what Rose has read. All right. Human fertilization occurs inside the woman's body. So the first word is inside. During mating, the sperms are squirted into the woman's body. They swim to meet the egg. One sperm enters it and forms an embryo. This is called fertilization. The embryo then grows inside the woman's body. It eventually reaches maturity and becomes an adult. The person is able to reproduce. So those are the words that you're supposed to do your corrections if you did not get them right. The other homework question that was given is what happens when an egg is fertilized? Receiving students, please do tell your teacher what happens when an egg is fertilized. Now in the video that you have seen what actually happens after an egg is fertilized. So we'll have someone from the class to tell us. Okay, let's have Gabriel.
It develops into a new baby.
It develops into a new baby, but what actually happens, right? That's okay, there is not wrong, it's okay, but let's try to look at it specifically. What actually happens when an egg is fertilized? Let's have Leonie.
Mating, the sperms are squirted into the female's body. The sperms then meet the egg. One sperm enters it and forms an embryo. This is called fertilization.
Good. All right. So what happens when egg is fertilized? Now you have explained to us fertilization, but what happens after an egg is fertilized?
When an egg is fertilized, pregnancy occurs because fertilization has already taken place and has formed an embryo. And when an embryo has been formed, that is when new life begins.
Good. All right. I should be specific in here. What happens to a fertilized egg? All right. Answers you have given are not wrong. They are all right. But we should have something like this. The fertilized egg divides. All right. The cells keep dividing. More and more cells are produced. The fertilized egg develops from a zygote to embryo, to fetus, and finally to a baby. So the first thing is, you've seen a cell that divides into 2 and into 4, and it continues, if you can remember the video. So straight after fertilization, that is what happens. Our lesson for today is on the topic reproductive process in animals. Before I look at reproductive process in animals, let's look at how this fertilization occurs. All right, we have a female. If you look at the screen, we have a female and a male. The female produces ova in the ovary. The male produces sperm in the testes. These two are very important because without the egg in the ovary and without the sperm in the testes, I don't think reproduction will take place. So these two organs, the testes and ovaries, are very important because they produce the sex cells. Sperm and egg are brought together, close together, by mating. When a male and female mate, then the sperm and egg are brought close together. Sperm and egg join together. When they join together, that is when fertilization occurs. The sperm and the egg can come close together, but even if they come close together, fertilization may not occur. It will only happen when the male and female sex cells join. Are you following? When fertilization occurs, we have looked at the cell, a new cell is formed, and that new cell is called a zygote. When the zygote continues to divide, more cells are formed, and eventually an embryo is formed. The embryo develops into a new individual. So the fertilization takes place when a male and a female sex cells unite, join together. Now, most living things you are familiar with, they produce the young through sexual reproduction. And sexual reproduction involves a process called fertilization. So you can see that fertilization is also a process. It's a process in which the male and female sex cells join. So that's the process called fertilization. That happens through sexual reproduction, male and female. All right, in animals, since we are looking at reproductive process in animals, fertilization takes place in 2 ways. One is called internal fertilization, and the other is called external fertilization. Can anyone tell me what you understand about internal fertilization? All right, I'll just give you 1 minute to discuss with your friends the difference between internal and external fertilization. Receiving students, let's see if you have some ideas of internal and external fertilization. Discuss with your friends what you understand or differentiate the both. If you come up with an answer, please raise your hands and tell your teacher what you think, or you can differentiate the both type of fertilizations. All right, can we have anyone, any volunteer to tell the class? All right, we have a friend there who's volunteering to tell the class what he understands about internal and external fertilization.
Internal fertilization occurs inside the body of animal or human being.
About external?
Takes place outside the body.
You agree? Anyone who doesn't agree? You got another idea of what is internal and external fertilization? Receiving students, what do you think? Our friend Eddie says that internal fertilization takes place within or inside of the body, and external fertilization takes place outside. You agree? All right. I think so. We will have to find out as we go through. Thank you, Eddie. Since we are looking at animal reproductive process, I will have to explain few animals on how they reproduce. And I would like you, the model class and receiving students, to listen very carefully, right? So allow me to explain some of these animals, and then I will give you some questions to work on. First of all, we will look at butterfly. All right, animals are classified in many, they are classified as insects, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, fish, and birds. So I will have a look at one of these animals in each of those categories. So in insects, let's have a look at butterfly. Usually the male butterfly is so colorful. Because of its colorful features, it attracts the female. That is when we are looking at the insects, especially the male and the female butterflies. Now, the male and female butterflies, they mate by putting their abdomen together. As soon as they put their abdomen together, the male butterfly inserts or passes the sperm into the female. The sperm fertilizes the egg in the female. The female butterfly then lays the egg on the side of a leaf. After a few days, the egg hatches, and a tiny caterpillar comes out. Caterpillar stays there for some time and eventually changes into a pupa. So this is the pupa. You will see it on the monitor. That is the egg that is fertilized. The egg, after a few days, it hatches and the caterpillar comes out. After some days, the caterpillar changes into a pupa. Pupa is a brown hard case, and inside that hard case, a lot of changes take place, right? So it begins, the caterpillar inside the pupa begins to develop its wings, the legs, the long legs, and also the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. So after some time, then it develops into an adult butterfly. So that's how the process takes place in an insect. Next one is amphibians. We are going to look at a frog. We have an adult frog there. You can see the adult frog. When it's breeding season, especially in wet season, the male frog tries to attract the female frog through making sounds, croaking sound. At this time, the female frog, it grows much bigger than the male frog, because the female frog, the body is filled with the eggs. So the male frog clings onto the back of the female frog, and it stays there for some time, even some days, just clings onto the back of the female. They then move to the edge of the water, and the female frog releases eggs. After the eggs are released, but before reaching the water, the male frog also quickly releases the sperm onto the eggs. As soon as the eggs reach the water, there are jelly substances being formed around the eggs. All right, you will see that the frog releases thousands of eggs. So as the sperm from the male frog. After some time, the eggs then hatch and tadpoles come out. So you will see, this is the eggs. Once they reach the water, after being fertilized, when the sperm reaches the eggs, they've been fertilized, and this is the egg. Embryo also forms within the egg here. And then after the egg hatches, tiny tadpole comes out, and this is the process, the tadpole, how it grows into a frog, and then leaves the water and lives as an adult frog. It takes about 3 or 4 years before the adult frog can reproduce. So that's about amphibians. Looking at birds, we'll have a look at chicken. The female chicken, which is called the hen, has an ovary. It also produces eggs, right? Now, what happens when the male and the female mate is the male mounts over the female, and there's a croaker. The croaker of the male joins with the croaker of the female and passes the sperm inside the female. The ovary here, it releases eggs, and these eggs are being fertilized by the sperm. And the egg, after it's fertilized, it moves on, and before coming out, the shells are being added. So it comes out, the egg comes out with shells. One egg is produced every 1 or 2 days by the hen, and it can produce about 10 to 15. But only those fertilized eggs can produce a chick. Some eggs are not fertilized, that they cannot produce chicks. So inside the egg, the tiny embryo develops. And after about 21 days, it hatches, and you will see that the chick is already developed. So after it hatches, it will just take few hours before the chick runs around and start feeding. Right, so that's on chicken. Fish, if we look at the fish, the female also lays many eggs. Soon after it lays eggs, the male fish goes over the eggs being laid, and it spreads out the sperm. The water in here is very important too. The movement of the water allows the sperm to spread out and fertilize the eggs. So many of the eggs have been released by the female, and so you can see that fertilization takes place outside of the body, and eventually one egg that is fertilized eventually turns out to be a fish. So that's how fish reproduce. You can see that the female has to find a good place to lay or to release the eggs, and the male one is there just waiting for the female to release and spreads the sperm over the eggs. You can see so many eggs being released here. This is a fish with eggs ready to be released. So eggs being released, and fertilization takes place, and fish is reproduced. So you will see so many eggs have been released. In mammals, we will look at pig. I think pig is found, it's commonly found around the country, so we'll have a look at the pig. Pig is matured, it's sexually matured after 9 months. So after 9 months, a pig can reproduce. The male, it produces sperm which is made in the testis, and the female produces eggs made in the ovary. The female can release around 5 to 10 eggs at one time, but the male produces millions of sperms. How they mate is the male pig inserts its penis into the female vagina, and sperm is passed on. So each egg then joins with a sperm, and fertilization takes place. The fertilized egg then moves to the uterus, and in the uterus, the small piglets develop there. Right? They stay there for about 16 weeks in the uterus, and then they are being born, and then they stay with the mother or the sow for about 10 weeks, feeding on the mother's breast. So that's how fertilization takes place within the pig. That's mammals. So we have looked at one insects, which we look at butterfly. We looked at amphibians, which is the frog, and we looked at fish. We looked at birds. In the bed, we looked at chicken and the mammals. So I hope you have understood how reproduction or fertilization takes place in these 5 different animals. Your questions. Quickly get this down. Receiving students, I would like you to also get these questions down. These questions, I will allow you to work individually, or if you want to discuss, you can discuss with your friend. Receiving students, you can do the same too. Question 2. Question 4. Last question. Explain why pigs produce more young ones than human beings. All right, students, you should have copied down those questions. I'm asking the receiving teachers if you can go through these questions together with your students at your own time. Before we finish off, we will just look at the first question. Which of the following animals have internal fertilization and which have external fertilization? So let's have some students to tell us which animals that we looked at have internal fertilizations. Rose, internal fertilization.
Pigs, chickens.
Pig, chicken.
What the?
All right, let's have someone to help Rose. All right, let's have Fiona. Which of the animals have internal fertilization? The animals that we looked at.
Pig, chicken, and fish.
Good. Let's have Mitchell.
Pig, chicken, and butterfly.
All right, good. All those answers, I won't say they're right or wrong. You go back, go through what I've said, and then we will look at them at our own time. So I'd like everyone to go through all those 5 questions, and we will look at them when we find some time. All right? That has brought us to the end of the lesson. Our next lesson will be on comparing reproductive processes, and our key phrase for today is animal reproductive processes. With that, thank you 8Es, receiving students and teachers for your participation.